So welcome everyone to today's episode where my guest is Liz Goodchild, and Liz is a life coach. She's not just any life coach. She was my life coach for around 18 months when I was in the really early stages of building my own coaching business. So Liz guided and supported me to explore some really quite challenging stuff at that time. You know, things like my self-doubt and limiting beliefs around what I was doing, who I was, my business and myself. And one of the things that I really think she helped me with was exploring some of my shame and my fears around my sexuality. And, you know, the fact that I'm sitting here and I'm creating, and I have created a podcast that is all about, you know, being really authentic and out and about yourself. But also, as all of you will know, if you've been listening to me, I talk a lot about, you know, struggling with my own sexuality, but also helping other women with that and really living fully as themselves. So, yeah, and helping me to see what was truly possible for myself. So needless to say, she holds a pretty special place in my life and in my heart. So I am so, so excited and to have her here. And I know she's going to be sharing some really valuable insights into creating a successful business. So welcome, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a lovely intro.
It's really great to have you here. And do you want to start actually just by telling us how you identify, what pronouns you use, and a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I identify as gay. Pronouns I use are she, her. Bit about me, I'm a coach. I'm a mother, I'm a wife. I live between Germany and the UK, so I have a coaching practice, which is mostly online. And I live between the two countries.
Yeah. And how long have you been in Germany now?
It's been 5 years this summer, which is crazy because it feels like I've been here 20 years and also 6 months or something like that. So, but yeah, it's been 5 years. We moved here when my son was 4 months old.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's 5 now. So we've lived here pretty much as long as he's been in the world. So it feels it's crazy how quickly time goes. But
that
also
is 5 years.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
When I first came across you, if you like, you were still in the UK.
Right, was I? Right.
Yeah, and because of the coaching school that we both trained at, you a little bit ahead of me, and I think you'd done a couple of videos on in the lounge in the Facebook group. And then I saw you at the conference in London, and I was like, that's it. I've got to work with her. Liz did this like amazing talk all about, it was about sort of being vulnerable to be yourself and be authentic and all of that stuff. But in a way that really was so inspiring and kind of like, I just knew that, you were going to be the coach for me, I guess, on that day, and then contacted you soon after. So,
So I think the summer of the conference, it was like August or September or something like that. So we'd probably only just moved here, maybe.
Oh, you just moved?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Time kind of just gets a bit fuzzy for me. So maybe we just moved here and, and then I'd kind of flown back to do the conference. So.
Oh, okay. You were already there.
Maybe
got my dates a bit muddled. Great. So, gonna ask you some questions, about your business. About, how you got into coaching, I suppose, and how you've sort of created what I think is, seems to be really like a kind of very successful coaching business, and the type of coaching business that I think not only coaches will listen to this podcast, but business owners, and I think there's so many parallels with all business really, in terms of getting it established and, making it work for you in the way that works for you and for your clients. So how long have you been in coaching? Like, when did you start your coaching business?
I started my business in 2013. So I think I trained as a coach, or finished my training in 2012, and then kind of pretty much started straight away. So yeah, 2013 is probably like the birth of my business. It's been through many different iterations, but that's when it all started. I think that's when I became quite serious about it. Probably 2013.
And what were you doing before that?
So before that, I worked in marketing and sales and events. In a boring corporate career.
That's when you were poking pencils in your eyes.
That was when, I felt like poking pencils in my eyes. So I think I've always been an entrepreneur, even though actually this is my first foray into it. But I think I've always had, quite an independent, individual / rebellious approach to work. So even though I spent, a lot of my career or a lot of my adult life working for companies, I've always taken a pretty individual approach. I'm definitely not a team player, all that stuff you write on your CV about being a team player and stuff like that. Like, I'm not. I'm definitely a bit of a lone wolf. So I think I had quite an entrepreneurial mindset, even when working in the corporate world, and got really quickly frustrated by just, the protocol and all the policies and stuff that never made any sense to me. So I think having my own business was always the thing that was for me.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what that thing was until coaching came into my life. So
yeah. How did it come into your life, coaching?
Oh, it's quite a long story, so I'll try and keep it short. So I originally began my training. I decided I wanted to train as a therapist after experiencing therapy myself throughout my 20s. Started training as a therapist. Got about 3 years into it. And then slowly started to realize that actually I didn't know if I wanted to be a therapist and work at that level with people. At the same time, I was really into marathon running and, endurance running actually. So I was really into ultramarathon running as well, and became quite fascinated by the concept of mindset. I guess if you're out there running, miles and miles and miles.
What was it, 50 or 100?
Oh, more than that. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Just like, the old 100 here, 100 there.
So I became fascinated by my mindset really, and the mindset of the the runners that I knew, because of course anything over probably a marathon or maybe even less than that becomes way less about like physical endurance and more about mental endurance. So I started to
5K, anything over 5K. Yeah.
So I started to rub shoulders with quite a lot of interesting people during that time, endurance runners and endurance athletes, and very quickly became really interested in their mindset and whatever else. And that kind of collided at the same time as me starting to really question whether I wanted to be a therapist or not. And I was 3 years in and thinking, oh God, this has maybe been a huge mistake, and now what? And at that time, which seems crazy now because it was probably maybe like 2011 or something like that, I had no concept of coaching. It just, as far as I know, it didn't really exist in the UK in the way that it does now. All I knew about coaching was probably more the kind of like Tony Robbins types,
Yeah.
like big guys with, mics on their faces shouting at audiences and whatever else. And I was a bit like, that's kind of not what I want to do. And then I heard about Animas, which is where we both trained, and they were the only coaching school, again, at that time, maybe it's different now, where I found that they kind of sat quite neatly between what I would call performance coaching, which is like, the real masculine, like hardcore Tony Robbins type, and therapy, like they sat quite in the middle. So I found them, and and then the rest is history. I trained with them back when they weren't even called Animas, they were called the Smart School then. And then started my business soon after qualifying, and gave up the therapy training.
Yeah. Thank you. And so in terms of your business, so from then, you said there's been a few iterations between when you started and now. Can you give us a little bit of a sort of, potted history, I guess, about how it's kind of changed and grown to where you are today with it?
Yeah, so after qualifying, I was still working full time in my corporate job, and was really coaching around my coaching work, corporate world. So, I would be seeing clients before work and after, and whatever else. And it got to the point for me where I started really struggling to kind of fit it all in. It also collided with starting a family. So my partner gave birth to our son around that time as well. And it really got to the point where I just couldn't continue, going to work and doing a 9 to 5 and coaching, and something had to give. So it was around that time, I think what happened, and we were talking about it the other day, actually, my wife and I, that what happened was I actually was approached by an organization that wanted me to come on board and coach some of their employees. I can't even remember fully what it was now. It's all a bit of a blur. And I had to say no, because I couldn't do it. I'd asked my boss at the time, for the time off, and it just wasn't possible. And it was at that point where I said, something's got to give now. There's no way that my business is going to grow in the way that I want it to, whilst I'm still, holding down a 9 to 5. So that was the point where we decided to move to Germany. And that's when I started my business. So it really was a bit of a sink or swim situation, which now looking back was kind of crazy, or what I would consider crazy, because I think I'm quite risk adverse. Like I think I take risks, and perhaps, people would view that now with things that I do in my life, but the fact that we just gave up our London life, we sold our London flat, and we just kind of went, and it's odd because I didn't ever really have any concerns that my business wouldn't work. And I don't know if that is like quite crazy. Like now I look back, but I just had this quiet confidence that it would work. And we didn't really discuss what would happen if it didn't. So we'd be living in Germany, and we'd kind of sold everything in London and like moved and whatever else. And it didn't really cross my mind that it wouldn't work. Which now I look back and think, wow, that was like a pretty big thing to do with a 4-month baby, 4-month-old baby in tow as well. Like, what were we thinking? But that's what we were thinking. So
yeah, I guess that's what's coming up for me when you were talking about it, and that making that massive decision. And it felt like you could look at it and think, God, what a massive risk. How did you do it? But it must have felt something right about it, so intuitively knowing that it's going to be okay.
I think it was. I think I've always, I've struggled with my own version of self-doubt and anxieties and concerns and whatever else. But I think what I've learned about myself is that I always have this kind of quiet core confidence that not that I can kind of do anything I want, or if I decide to do something, then I'll be successful. But I think I'm not scared of failing, and actually you know, as my business has grown and developed, I've actually become way more uncomfortable with success than failing. And yeah, I've always had this quiet confidence that things will kind of be okay, and that I can turn my hand to things, and I don't know where that comes from, but it's something that I've only just started to realize about myself, that yeah, I have this kind of core confidence, and yeah, I have my own, you know, I have self-doubt. It's not that I'm super confident about everything, but I just have this quiet knowing, perhaps it's yeah, like a deep wisdom that it will all be all right.
Yeah, and that thing around the failing, or not the failing, the more of the kind of fear of success might be an interesting thing to look at.
Sure. Yeah.
Hear a bit more about.
Yeah.
So to where you are now today with your business, what's the kind of key things that have changed and grown, I suppose?
I do way less group work than I used to do. So I used to do a lot of group work. I now mainly do one-to-one work with my clients. So I work with about 17 clients a week, something like that. In a one-to-one capacity. So yeah, my business has changed a lot. I guess in the way, not so much in the way that I work with my clients on a one-to-one level, but I think as my business has grown, it's been really interesting because I've realized recently that I don't have as much time to write and create things and be on social media and stuff like that. So that's something that actually I've kind of missed, and I hadn't realized I was missing until just recently. And it's something that I'm looking to pivot with my business so that I actually have more time to engage with people and write and kind of,
we miss your writing.
I miss writing. You know, I used to write so much, and I think for me as a coach or as a developing coach, it was really helpful because I'm one of those people where sometimes I don't know what I'm thinking until I write. And then sometimes I write something and think, wow, I didn't even know that that's what I thought about it. And it really helped me understand who I was as a coach and what my coaching philosophy was and my approach through actually writing about things. So it's something that, again, I guess as, you know, your business evolves and changes, that sometimes you just have less time for things and whatever else. So that's one of the main ways that it's changed is that I'm much less present online, and I'm far less creative than I have been, and that's something that I'm looking to change.
Yeah, that's really interesting what you're saying about how it helps you work out your sort of your own sort of self-development and self-evolution and expansion and all that kind of stuff. I've definitely felt that with my writing and the content that I put out there. So I can really relate to that.
Yeah, I think also, you know, my writing or being a writer is also something that's helped me understand who I am as a human as well. You know, it's a place, you know, for me to put my thoughts and you know, it's also helped me just kind of learn about me and who I am in the world. So
and giving that to other people, I think, is really powerful. Being on the receiving end of it and going, oh my God, you get it, you know, you get what it feels like. I think that it's a real amazing thing. So in terms of you personally, so one of the things you mentioned a minute ago was like less of a fear of failure and more of a fear of success. What sort of things have kind of like, you know, in your own personal growth and development as time's gone on with your business and stuff, what things stand out for you personally?
In terms of what I've struggled with, or
like learning, I guess, and your own sort of learning and
so I think you know, the biggest learning for me, especially as a coach, but I guess this would apply to most business owners, is when you leave, you know, if you've had a corporate career, no matter, you know, if you've hated it like I did or whatever else, that there is something nice about having colleagues and also having a measure of how well you're doing or not doing. So again, it only occurred to me recently when I was talking to a client about this, that, you know, when you own your own business, especially if, you know, it's a small business and it's a pretty much like one person empire, there's no one doing appraisals with you. You know, you don't really have a measure for whether you're developing or, you know, whether you're really growing and doing all right or whatever else. And I think, as I said earlier, that I'm a lone wolf. I always have been. I like doing things in my own way and whatever else. But that's been a real challenge for me. It's felt like a pretty lonely island. And, you know, that might be my own doing as well. I think I just, you know, as I was growing my business, I definitely kept my head down. I didn't really look around at what other people were doing because it was never helpful for me. So actually, I didn't really have a network until quite recently of other people in the same boat. So I guess, you know, when you work, you have a, you know, you're working in a corporate job, you know, you have people to say, oh, like, you know, has this happened to you? Or like, how did you deal with that? Or whatever else. Whereas I was kind of doing it all on my own. And yeah, it can get pretty exhausting. So it's been really important, you know, over the years as my business has grown to make sure that I'm really looking after myself and that I outsource as much as possible. You know, not trying to do everything myself, but as a coach, it's really important that I have a coach and I also have a supervisor as well. So somewhere where I can take any challenges or issues that I have and that I have that support as well, because I think, you know, it's so common, especially in the early days, just to try and, you know, do everything yourself and you just have no measure of how well you're doing.
Yeah. And I think definitely that thing around, I felt it, that kind of like, sort of like a loneliness because no one else gets it. No one else, you know, you've got friends, might have great, amazing friends, but if they are all employed or doing sort of different types of work, then it does feel, I felt it myself, very sort of isolated and kind of like no one to talk to. And I'm fortunate, I do have a few friends stroke ex-coaching school contacts, networks, you know, that I've got, you know, do have really great relationships with, and they get it. And I have been on, so I did a really great sort of business development program last year and met some other women, female entrepreneurs, you know, and that was fantastic, you know, because we went through the pain of the learning, if you like, on that program and really stretching ourselves together. So we shared tears with each other, you know, over Zoom or whatever. But, you know, it was like, we really kind of went there. And that's, you know, it's it forms those really trusting relationships, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think it's so important to have a network, you know, and I didn't, for various reasons. It probably didn't help that we'd moved, you know, to Germany and I wasn't in the UK as much anymore and whatever else. But yeah, I think it would have been way more helpful if I'd really focused on creating a network. So.
And in terms of like the professional, more sort of business side challenges, I guess thinking back maybe to when it was new, you were doing like new stuff. To run a business and make it all work and all that kind of stuff, what would be the things that stick out for you in terms of the things that were challenging and how you kind of like made them work now?
I mean, I think everything was a challenge. So most things were a challenge because I'd not done it before. So even you know, creating a website and, you know, all of the kind of background stuff that you don't fully consider, or I didn't fully consider until, you know, you kind of walk into them. Like accounting and, you know, all of those things that I hadn't really thought about until I've suddenly realized like I had to do a tax return and I didn't know how to do that and
Yeah.
whatever. It was all really challenging. And again, maybe it was good for me that I didn't really consider those things before, because they could have been things that had put me off. So I kind of went into it a bit kind of short-sighted, I guess, about all of the things. And again, I think that that's often the challenge for business owners, especially small business owners, that you are everything. You know, you're the like web designer and the copywriter and the person who needs to do the tax return and all of those things. And and that's all, as well as, for me, being the coach as well, or whatever else. So there isn't anything that particularly sticks out as challenging, other than like all of it was
Yeah.
a shock.
Yeah. I remember my website. Oh my God, when I was working with you, I got so bloody hung up on that website.
Yeah.
And it was just a vehicle for me to procrastinate.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
to stop putting myself out there.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so painful though. I had to like make it perfect, and it was just anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of things that work now, like that you've learned to do well, maybe some systems type stuff, or like productivity stuff, any of those kind of things that you've got nailed, I suppose, that really help you to run your business. So you mentioned outsourcing earlier.
Yeah.
Good to know what.
I outsource everything.
Like what sort of things? When you say everything, what do you mean?
So I have an accountant. So I have undiagnosed dyscalculia, which is like I read numbers back to front and show me an Excel spreadsheet, and I just start sweating and crying. So there's no point in me doing that. It would be, really stressful and too challenging and not the best use of my time. I realized that that's quite a privileged position. So again, when I was starting out, I couldn't afford an accountant or to outsource other things. So I now have someone who looks after my website. So, if things need updating or things break or whatever else, that they do that for me. I have an accountant, and anything that really needs a lot of my time and attention that I feel isn't of best use for me, I tend to outsource now. So it might be that I take on someone, to help me, work on something on my website or whatever else.
Yeah.
And that I have absolutely no idea how to do that. And I would rather just outsource it so that I can focus my energy and attention on working with my clients.
Yeah. What you do best.
Yeah. I hope so. So
definitely
yes,
so.
Yeah.
And so in terms of that work and kind of like managing your diary, making sure that you've got the time for your clients, for yourself, for your family, all of that stuff, how do you make that work?
I think the word that comes up for me when you were talking then is boundaries. And I had zero at the beginning. And again, maybe in a way, if I'd had pretty strong boundaries then, my business wouldn't have grown, because I don't like the word hustle, but I kind of hustled quite a lot at the beginning. And as my business developed and grew, it became very clear to me very quickly that boundaries were going to have to be important. So, for example, I am at my best in the mornings. So I don't coach in the evenings. It's also a time of day that is me and my son. So, it's bed and bath time. And that's, the time of day where he knows I'm going to be with him, and my wife can go and do whatever. And she knows that that's like her clocking off time. But I'm most energetic, most focused, most creative, most present in the mornings. So that's when I coach my clients. And again, I think it's sometimes, we talk about boundaries, and again, if it's the beginning of your coaching career or your business, you might not have the privilege of turning people away if they want to work in the evenings or on a Sunday or whatever else, which is again something that I didn't do at the beginning. So I would work outside the hours that I wanted to, because I guess I was kind of in that hustle and really trying to grow a business. Whereas now, I only work in the mornings, so I have the afternoons to maybe write or do other things, or hang out with my wife and son, or exercise or anything like that. So it's really, really important. I think that's always the challenge, whether you're a coach or you have a business, is that, you can quickly get into kind of cycles of, well, if I don't take that client, or, I don't make that sale or whatever else, then there might not be another one around the corner. And then you might, kind of bend and work in a way that doesn't feel good for you. So that's something that I learned pretty slowly. Actually, I just started getting quite tired and feeling like, not resentful, but knowing in my body when I said yes, when actually it was a big no. So that's been a real learning for me now. So now if I work with a client, and the timings don't work for us, it's something I always check. And I explain, the hours that I work. If it doesn't really work for them, then it's not going to work for me either. I'm not willing to work in the evenings, and, at times where I'm not going to show up, at my best for them as well. So, yeah. So boundaries. I say, I spend a lot of time saying no to things.
And in terms, I think boundaries are fundamental as well.
Yeah.
But I also think they are pretty challenging.
Yeah.
And I guess what was going through my mind when you were talking was around I guess it's there's a mindset piece there around what makes it hard, and what is it that we can cultivate in ourselves to support ourselves to be able to feel okay about it, because we can establish boundaries but still feel that anxiety or that struggle with it. I think there's a practical aspect of it that's quite straightforward. Like you say, I don't work with clients in the evenings. These are my hours, these are how I do it, this is how many I do, whatever. Those sort of, and I will and won't allow overrun, because one of the things that I do is I see clients. I was before lockdown. We are still in lockdown for anyone listening to this episode. Imagine people might be listening to this episode like 5-10 years from now. So I think in the UK we're about week 7-8, something like that, of lockdown because of coronavirus. And one of the things that I've struggled with in the past is because they're coming into my home, I find it harder than I do when I'm online to be able to start as well, because sometimes they might get here early. What do you do? I don't like, I'm not going to leave someone out in the street. And then it's like, because there's a temptation as well. I love my clients. I love spending time with my clients. So there's a temptation to, it's the professional versus the, when I'm working with my client, I'm a coach. That sort of stuff. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on the sort of what the challenges are around the way that we think and perceive and believe we need to be with our clients, maybe, as we're talking about coaching here primarily. But I guess it applies to personal trainers, people in fitness, therapists, yoga teachers, all of it, and that, the sort of like struggle that we might have there.
And it is a struggle. It's not easy for me to say, these are the hours that I work, and I don't work evenings, and to hear someone say, well, I can only do evenings, and it's difficult for me to sit there and say, well, it's not going to be it's not going to work. It's still difficult. I still struggle saying that and whatever else, and there's always a part of me that thinks, well, maybe you could, it's only one evening or whatever else.
One person.
It's only one person or whatever else. But I think the way that I see it is, we're always teaching people how to treat us, right? So, and I guess my coaching approach is very much, you know, if I say, you know, say if we were having a consultation now and you said, hey Liz, I can only do, you know, 8 o'clock on a Tuesday, that's the only time I can see you, which would be 9 o'clock my time, which is like bedtime for me, by the way, because I am like super nana, so I'm always tucked up in bed at like 9 o'clock. I'm good to know one. So, you know, and I say, well, I don't work evenings. And then you say, well, I really want to work with you, and, you know, it's the only time that I can do. And then I say, oh, go on then, you know, go on then. I can make the time for you. What I'm doing is I'm modeling a behavior, a really, unboundaried, unhealthy, you know, if we can call it that, behavior to the client. And so it's not, you know, it's yes, that there might be anxiety for me, and I might feel like, you know, pretty bad for saying no or whatever else, but it's the same, you know, I see it the same as how I show up for my son as well, that, you know, he's not always listening. In fact, he's barely listening to what I'm saying, but he's always watching me, you know. So if I'm not showing up, if I'm not doing the things that I say I'm going to do, you know, if I'm not living my life with integrity, because kids just watch all day long. You know, he said to me yesterday, I said, okay, I'm just going to pop to my office now. I don't work in our house. And I said, I'll be back in like 10 minutes. And I wasn't, you know, I got distracted and I don't know, lost in an email or whatever else. And I kind of rocked up back home, you know, half an hour late. And he was like, where were you? You know, and I was like, in my office. And he was like, you said you were going to be 5 minutes and I was waiting for you. And I was like, you're so right. And I got completely lost in an email. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent.
Yeah, no, but it's just role modeling, isn't it? I think
it's the modeling, you know, what message does that send?
Yeah.
Prospective client, when, you know, I'm clear with them and say, that's not something I do. And then, you know, 5 minutes later, I say, you know what, you know, it's only one evening or whatever else. Like, we're already off, not to a bad start, but I'm teaching them something there.
Yeah.
And we also teach people how to treat us. So, you know, it might be then that client goes, well, you know, could you do like a Sunday or what, you know, and suddenly it's, you've completely lost.
Yeah. That's how I ended up coaching a client at 5 a.m.
Yeah, it's just all these things that we say yes to. Yeah.
That's so powerful though. And as you started talking, I was like, role modeling, you know, it's like, exactly. I think that's really helpful as well, to kind of like have that in our, you know, in our sense of what we're doing and the integrity around the work and all of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, boundaries is something I work a lot with my clients. So, you know, if I can't walk my own talk, if I'm, you know, bending all my boundaries left, right and center with them, they're aware of that in some way or whatever else, then, you know, what message is that sending them?
So surprises.
I like surprises.
Have you had any good positive surprises then in your business?
Have I had any positive surprises in my business?
Yeah. It's like, oh, I never thought it would be like this, or...
Yeah, I mean, I think I never thought it would be so rewarding. And I know that probably sounds like a strange thing to say as a coach, because of, you know, it can be really rewarding, but there is just something so heartwarming and wonderful about watching someone, you know, come home to themselves and to dismantle and unlearn like years and years and years of beliefs and ideas about themselves that it's not true. And some, you know, it kind of, you know, it probably seems really cheesy, but sometimes I think, wow, I get to do this every day as a job, and it's just such a wonderful, you know, it's just such a wonderful way of working. So that was a surprise. Like, was a surprise just how rewarding it is.
Yeah, such an incredible honor, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
To
absolutely,
be
absolutely.
to be part of that.
Yeah, yeah. And I sometimes get nice surprises from clients. In fact, one yesterday sent me, you know, the artist Charlie Maxey. Is he called Charlie Maxey? Maxey. He's on Instagram. If anyone's listening to this, he's this wonderful fine artist. He, you know, have you seen you've probably seen them because he goes quite viral. There's pictures of a boy and a horse and a fox. No, you're just looking at me blankly. So I will send you later.
Oh yeah, please do.
She sent me a Charlie Maxey print yesterday. It just arrived in the mail, and so they're nice little surprises as well. I know they're not the surprises that you meant, but yeah, that was a nice surprise.
Lovely. And then I think that, like, yeah, was more of I'm not going to say shock, but like less nice surprise, I suppose, about
responsibility. Sometimes, and still sometimes it happens, but more so, you know, maybe a few years ago, just the responsibility of having a business. And again, as a coach, but you know, this will apply to most business owners, of just, you know, the responsibility of showing up for humans every day and showing up with the right amount of energy and compassion and focus. That was a huge, I wouldn't say it was a huge challenge, but it was a challenge for me. Sometimes I got really overwhelmed, especially I think as a coach, you know, of like, wow, there's all of these people, and, you know, I've got to show up for them all. And I think maybe at the beginning of my coaching career, I perhaps I think I kind of misconstrued how responsible I was for my clients and the work that we were doing. And actually that's shifted a lot. And actually, you know, the responsibility is on them. But I think just the responsibility of being a business owner, you know, being the breadwinner in my family, it's all on my business and whatever else. That's been like, as I said, still is sometimes like a huge, like, moment. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to swear then, but I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
I said bloody. You're allowed to say bloody.
Okay. I'm not going to say any swear words because it will just like open them, and then you'll have to just bleep it all out. So.
Holding. I guess what was coming up for me is all that you're holding for those people, and I definitely wobbled. I think not recently, but I've definitely been through a time where I was wobbling about that responsibility feeling, I think. And then what resonated about what you said just now was about how it's their, you know, it's their responsibility. And just knowing that, finding for me, it was like finding my kind of like getting in the place where I felt comfortable with, you know, holding what I knew I could hold for them, and build and having the relationship with them that feels like I'm giving them the support, enough support, you know, between sessions and things like that.
Sure. But knowing
working it all out, it does take a bit of time, and we're all different, you know, we're unique coaches, aren't we? And the way that we, you know, we have our ethics and our, you know, our code of conduct and all of that stuff. But our container, I guess, that we work in is all going to be slightly different because we're all slightly different people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, a big learning for me as a coach was noticing that when I get upset or worried or, I don't know, worked up about a client, especially perhaps around the outcomes or the results of the work that we're doing, the moment I notice that is the moment I have to remind myself that I'm too attached to the outcome. And I think that's really common with clients, with coaches, that they get so fixated on the client getting results that they just become so attached that they've kind of lost their role in it all. And I think it's so common. I work with so many coaches. I work with therapists and psychologists and anyone in the helping field, you know, that the moment you kind of go down that road of getting overly worried or, you know, whatever it may be about a client and you know, the outcome of the sessions and whatever else, it's a big sign that you've just become too attached. And, you know, as a coach or a therapist or whatever, you know, you can, you know, your role is to instigate and support the process for change, but you can't, you know, you're not responsible for it.
Yeah.
And that is a fine line. Like that is a line that I think I will continue to have to practice and pull myself back from, probably forever, as long as I do this. So and I, you know, that might apply, you know, to people who are not coaches as well, but business owners and stuff like that. You know, maybe when you're writing a book and stuff like that, feeling, you know, overly responsible for the audience and how they might receive your work and whatever else. And that is, again, a sign that, you know, you're too attached. You're too attached.
Yeah. It's like facilitating their change as well, isn't it? I guess what I was thinking of was almost like, personal trainers. I keep thinking of personal trainers.
Yeah.
I don't know what that says about me. I must be feeling like I need to do it a bit more. But yeah, it's like being responsible for whether they lose weight or not, or whether they, you know, reach their fitness goals and all of that stuff, isn't it? It's like you can give them all that they need to make it happen.
Yeah. But if they're going eating, you know, drive-through McDonald's after every training session.
Exactly.
Or for another reason, they're just not losing the weight, or they're not getting into the shape they want, or whatever else, you know. Yeah, it's you know, if you're too overly you know, concerned about that, you're too attached.
Yeah. So what would you say have been your sort of biggest successes, business, personal?
It's really hard to measure, because I'm fascinated with the concept of success and what that actually means. Because, you know, I could talk to you about the financial successes, or I could talk to you about, you know, having a full coaching practice with a 4-week waiting list, or I don't know, whatever, you know, all of those things, I guess. You know, I bought myself a brand new Mini Cooper Countryman in January. That could be seen.
I thought you were going to say a sit-on lawnmower or something.
No, I've got a robot lawnmower though. That's a lawnmower that just drives itself around. A robot lawnmower. It's like a little lawnmower that basically mows the grass itself.
How cool.
I know, but I'm convinced that this is the start of the end, and that there's going to be like a lawnmower apocalypse, and they're all going to come together and like take down human.
Horror film.
Freaks me out. Like when I see that little thing like going around my garden, sometimes it like aims at me, like it was going that way, and it turns around and comes towards me. I think, no.
Has it got like blinking lights or something?
No, but they have lights. So in the winter, you know, I'm making my coffee and I'm like looking out into the garden, and then this like thing goes past, you know, with like its lights on. It's freaky. Yeah. So no, I haven't got a lawnmower what are they called? Like a ride-on lawnmower.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yes. So yeah, you know, I'm fascinated by success.
I need to change the question, I think. Because...
Well, no, it's a great question. But, you know, how do you measure success? And, you know, I've never been...
What is it?
I've never been bothered by, you know, I've never been hugely, you know, money orientated or hugely kind of, you know, set goals for myself about how many clients or whatever. And so for me, success really is much more correlated to freedom. So, you know, I get to take my kid to kindergarten, or I get to pick him up, or I get to, you know, this afternoon I finished a morning of coaching clients, and you know, and then I had a big like ninja fight with him in the living room for like an hour, and before doing this. And for me, that's success. You know, that I am in control of my own time. You know, last June, my wife and I and our son, you know, we went to Canada and America for 3 weeks and traveled around and, you know, hired a car and just moved around. And again, that's success for me, is that I now live a life where I can do that. I don't have to ask a boss if I can have the time off. I just figure it out and off we go. So for me, our lifestyle, the way we live our life, which is pretty quiet, you know, and simple, and we live on a farm. It's an old farm that belonged to my wife's family that's gone back in generations, and it's unused now, you know, and we've got lots of projects, and, you know, we're going to start introducing animals to the farm and stuff like that. So to me, that is success, digging around in the vegetable patch and growing spinach, and like having that time for me is success. So yes, you know, I earn a good living from what I do, and again, we're in an incredibly privileged position, but it's you know, it's not about that for me. It's about living, living life on my own terms, I guess.
Yeah.
It's the lifestyle.
Yeah. And a feeling, I guess, as well, more of a
Yeah, feel free. You know, it's one of my core values is freedom, and I do feel free. And you know, it always comes at a price. I was talking to my sister about that the other day. She said, I just could not have my own business. Like, not knowing where the next paycheck is coming from would just be too much. And I said, yeah, I know, but I take that over having a boss telling me what to do, or telling me, you know, having to sit in an office for 8 or 9 hours a day when I've done my work in 3 or whatever else. Like, I would take that every day. So, you know, freedom is important to me. Yeah.
So, a couple more questions.
Yeah.
Ideal clients.
It's a good one.
I know you're going to like this one. Yeah.
An ideal client. I mean, I don't have a niche, so I'm probably the only coach in the world who doesn't have a niche. No, that's, you know, but I know that I think I probably like go against most business coaching advice of like having a niche and stuff like that. So I don't really have an ideal client in terms of like, if we look through the lens of a niche. So I work with men and I work with women and non-binary people, and they all come to me with different things. So it could be career issues or issues in their relationship or whatever it may be. Of course, there are, you know, some people I don't work with, or you know, areas that, you know, I don't work, and I will refer them to whatever else. But I don't have an ideal client as such, you know, in that way. I think for me, an ideal client is someone who's willing to do the work, you know, who's willing to show up, and, you know, they're interested in educating themselves about themselves, which is ultimately for me what coaching is all about, you know, is learning why you do the things that you do, and, you know, being open to being challenged and looking at things from a different perspective. So as long as my clients have that going on for them, that's a pretty ideal client for me. And I'm not talking about clients who I turn up and they're like full of courage and whatever else. Or some of them are really like, oh, I don't want to do this. But as long as they've got like even 10% willingness to show up, then they're pretty ideal to me. So
that's what they have in common.
That's what they have in common, that they're you know, they you know, they know that they want to change, or they really want to like figure out why they keep doing that, or why do they behave like that, or why do I go through these cycles of the same stuff like over and over and over again. And they just have to have that willingness and that openness to really want to dig into that. Even, as I said, even if it's like by 10% and the rest of them is like, oh, I don't even want to go near that, even at that 10%, like, that's an ideal client.
And I mean, as you're talking, I'm thinking, because I've heard you talk about this before, you know, the fact that you don't necessarily have a niche in the typical way. But I guess as you're talking, what I'm thinking about is the fact that not everybody that wants coaching is one of those people that you're talking about. Now, some people want coaching to create a multi-million pound business or something. So that it's there are people that will be drawn to you and the messaging that you put out there. You know, your strapline on your website, which I think you're
not allowed to say because it's got a swear word in it.
It's only a baby swear word.
Okay.
So Liz's strapline on her website is coaching for people who give a shit. Is that right?
Yeah. So that's my ideal client, people who give enough of a shit to want to do something about whatever it may be. And you know what? I talk a lot about niching and, you know, with my clients who are, you know, business owners and whatever else. I talk a lot about it. And I guess what I have learned about myself and is sometimes helpful for coaches and therapists and whatever else, anyone really who's, you know, considering a niche, is I am the niche. Like, I am the niche. That's it. Like, it's simple, maybe not so simple, but it's simple for me. The people I work with are drawn to me for a reason. So that could, as I said, be a man or a woman or a non-binary person or someone who wants to change their career or someone who wants to figure out why they can't stand the husband anymore, whatever that may be. And I work with people over so many different areas, but I am the niche. Like, they want to work with me because of, you know, my approach and how I show up and how I present myself and whatever else. You know, I'm pretty no nonsense and direct, and I say it as it is, and I'm pretty clear about that on my website, and that's what they want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I am the niche.
You are the niche. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that worked. That works for me, you know. People, exactly. Like you say, most people, I think, want to work with someone who feels like the sort of person that's gonna understand them and give them, you know, what they need. And they need to get a sense of you, a feel for you.
Totally.
It's not, we're not buying coaching off a shelf or a pick list or something. I would never choose a coach like that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, I was saying that to a woman who I spoke to today, who had a consultation with, you know, I said, the most important thing in all of this, you know, is not my qualifications, is not my, you know, my approach. Well, maybe my approach, but it's that, you know, we get on, you know, there is a connection, because sometimes coaching can be really challenging. You know, I might take you to places, you might have experienced that with me, where you're like, I do not want to go there with that question, or I'm so uncomfortable right now, and I will just sit, you know, in that space where my clients are squirming and they really don't want to go there with that, you know, and that in itself is such a, you know, such a like magical, like powerful place. And so for me, if that connection's not there, then I as the coach don't feel comfortable challenging my client or helping them look at something differently, or sitting in that silence where they're just so uncomfortable or they're so emotional, and they won't feel comfortable experiencing in that. So, you know, I always say on my consultations, you know, I want this call is to make sure that you're not a weirdo off the internet, like for both of us, you know, and it's that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Otherwise they're never gonna get to the place you need to get to do the work.
Not at all. They're always going to feel, you know, uncomfortable, or they might not be able to say, hey, you know, when we did that last session, I didn't really like it, or it didn't work for me, or I don't like that book that you sent me, you know, or whatever it is. You know, if they don't feel comfortable with that, then you know, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. I mean, it will work, but it, you know, it won't be as powerful as it can be.
Yeah. It will be it'll be limited.
Yes, it will be limited. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm interested to know who inspires you, and who maybe who your role models might be. If you, some people don't like the word gurus and stuff like that, but whatever. Where do you get your inspiration from for life, for living, I suppose, as well as your work?
Yeah, I think work-wise, I'm pretty inspired by Carl Rogers. So he was, I think we would call him a therapist. He became quite renowned in the 1950s, around a time when, you know, therapeutic approaches were very much, you know, psychoanalytical and psychotherapeutic, you know, laying on the couch and the therapist very much being the blank canvas. And he was the first therapist of his time to say, actually, you know, what's really important here is fostering a genuine connectedness with my clients. And I think actually he changed the word from patients to clients, you know, because patients kind of already set a kind of, you know, power dynamic. So his work, or his approach to congruence, which is really, you know, we can call that genuineness of really showing up as himself, as opposed to this kind of, you know, typical like blank canvas or blank screen, really, which, you know, was very much, you know, a kind of psychoanalytical approach. So I'm really inspired by his work. I think his work is something that very much influences my work. I think I probably take that to a different level than he did. I don't know, you know, if he kind of, you know, I write quite openly about my life and, you know, what's going on. I think my clients, you know, have a pretty good idea about who I am. There's not much, well, there's obviously loads that they don't know about me, you know, but I'm pretty open and what else. So his work is really inspiring for me. In terms of like outside of life, you know, I'm really inspired by so many people. I'm so inspired by my friends. I think I've always had a pretty tenuous connection with friends in the past. I've always been someone, again, maybe it's that like lone wolf way that I have, where, you know, I've kind of flitted around and had lots of different friends and whatever else. But as I've got older, I've really developed some really just incredible, strong friendships with a group of women, and they just inspire me every day, you know. And it's not that they're doing anything, you know, they're not out there dominating the world or whatever else, but they just show up with so much integrity and realness and humanness, and they're the kind of people who I can just say, I'm just like not like okay today, and I don't know why, and that they're just there for me, and they listen, and they don't, you know, come at me with like 50 billion things that I can do and all the advice and whatever else. So they really inspire me. I think, you know, as I said, as I've grown older, I've just realized how important it is to have people in your life who, you know, and I can just tell them anything. I can say anything at like 7 a.m. in the morning. I can send them a WhatsApp, you know, voice note, be like, okay, I'm going to tell you this. Get ready. I hope you had some coffee. And they're just like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's so important to me. My son inspires me. You know, he's such a wild-hearted little boy, and I'm, you know, we're doing our best to not kind of like, you know, like knock that out of him, that just wildness that kids is so creative, and he just says it as it is, and it makes me laugh every day. He's like an old man that boy has been here many times before, I'm sure of it. He's had many lives before this one, and he's just like a little old man. And, you know, in things he says and whatever else, but he inspires me because, you know, he inspires me to show up, you know, because he's watching, you know, he's watching and he's listening, and he repeats things that I think he's not heard and whatever else. And I have really interesting conversations with him about all sorts of stuff, you know, and he inspires me. I'm also really inspired by creative people. So do you know Brandy Carlisle, the singer-songwriter? Yeah, I'm just so inspired by her. Actually, when we went on a road trip last summer to the States, we went to see her live in concert. The whole trip was around seeing her. So my very, very spontaneous wife, I saw that she was playing, it's called, what is it called? I can't remember now. Like a big kind of, like a
stadium.
Yeah, not a stadium. It's like out in the middle of nowhere, just in this kind of like rock formation, like it's like a bowl almost, and it's really famous.
What, like a natural thing?
Yeah, it's called the Gorge. It's called the Gorge Amphitheatre, if anyone wants to look. But anyway, I saw on Facebook or something like that she was playing there, and I kind of went home after a day's work and said, oh, you want to look at this amazing place that Brandi Carlile is performing, you know, next summer or whatever else. And then I just was like, yeah, it looks cool, you know, look it up. And then I went upstairs to have a shower, and I came downstairs and my wife was like, I just booked tickets. And I was like,
oh my God, wow.
I was like, it's in, you do know that it's in America, right? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, uh-huh. And like, okay. And she was like, it's fine, we'll figure it out, whatever else. So that was her doing. So we planned this whole trip around going seeing her. But you know, her songwriting, it's just something about her songs and the words and everything else that just like, you know, if I need to know where my soul is, I just listen to some of her songs. And I love the way she shows up as a queer woman. And she challenges, you know, a lot of politics and you know, is a real spokeswoman, I think. And I'm just inspired by the way she lives her life, you know, the way she shows up, and it really shows in her music. And again, she's someone who kind of gives you an insight into what family life is like, and she's real, you know. And she helped me, you know. She has 2 children. Her wife carried the children, and you know, she talks a lot in a lot of her shows, you know, and she does little intros before the songs. You know, she talked about how when her wife gave birth to their first daughter, that she was literally Googling, like, am I a sociopath? Because she felt nothing. She felt nothing towards this baby that had just appeared in the world. And I think that I felt like that, you know, for the first few weeks. I was just completely shell-shocked. My wife had an awful labor, and I just was like, suddenly this thing was here. And then I was a bit like, wow, I'm not feeling this like overwhelming love that everyone kept talking to me about, and I'm not feeling it. I'm just kind of like in like function mode and looking after him and whatever else. And it was only when I heard her and I was like, oh my God, that's how I felt. So I just she's just really inspiring to me. She talks about these things.
So needed.
Yes, absolutely.
I will make sure that her details of her in the show notes, so people can look her up, and anything else that we've talked about. So what's next for Liz Goodchild?
What's next? Well, I'm going to actually finish my training as a therapist. So I've decided that is something that I'm going to do. Obviously, in this present climate, it won't be something that I'm doing. So I have to wait until we're not in lockdown. But I'm actually going to finish my training, not necessarily because I want to practice as a therapist. I want to do it for my own development. I think it will be helpful with my work. I've noticed more and more that line that I was talking about between what is coaching and what is therapy. That sometimes my clients, you know, come along with things that really are best placed in therapy, and I have to refer them. And sometimes it then kind of makes our coaching relationship quite stilted whilst they go and kind of, you know, work through that or whatever else. So it's not that I want to particularly, you know, pivot my business and start practicing as a therapist, but I definitely want to finish my training. And then, I've started to really consider the long-term vision for my business. I think I've just been kind of like go mode for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And I've really started to think about things like, what do I want my business to look like when I'm 50? And lots of things. So I'd really like to.
When you're old, like me.
Not when I'm old, just, you know, what will it look like then? You know, I'll have a kid who's, you know, he'll be like probably teenager and doing his own thing and whatever else. And actually my wife, she has an auntie who is in her 70s and is a psychotherapist, and she's still so alive and brimming with ideas. And you know, at that age when people are starting to kind of, you know, think about the like just sitting down or whatever else, she's just so like, I've still got so much to do. And she's really, you know, I talk to her often. She really
She sounds inspirational.
Yeah, she's great, you know. And she's like, I'm going to do workshops for women, and she's a real feminist, and I just love her. And she's a lesbian, and you know, she's just great. And it's got me thinking about like, what do I want to be doing when I'm 70? And do I still want to be doing this work? And obviously, yeah, you never know, but I think I do. And it's got me thinking about, what I want. So we've always talked about, as I said before, we live on a farm, and we've always talked about kind of creating not necessarily a retreat, but like somewhere for people to come and just be and to work quietly with me, but to also, I don't know, go and feed the goats or help us make a chicken shed or whatever else, but just somewhere for people to come to kind of come back to themselves almost. It's such a beautiful home that we live in, and the area and whatever else. And yeah, kind of like a home, create like having a home for people to come home to themselves.
Yeah, I love that idea.
My friends love to come to stay. They just say, oh, it just feels like a holiday, and it's so relaxing and whatever else. So that's the long-term vision for me, is creating, whether it's here or whether it's in the UK, but almost having like a practice, a clinic, like a retreat clinic-y, I don't know what the word will be, but somewhere for people to come maybe for 6 or 7 days and really work through things and be able to access different kind of approaches and modalities and stuff like that. So it's something that I've been slowly talking about with a few friends of mine who work in the same field, maybe slightly different, of like, hey, and they're pretty excited. So it's nice to have like a 10-year plan, something to grow into. It's something that I wouldn't want to do right now. It's something that, I want to have more training in, and I feel like I've still got a lot of growing before I could kind of offer myself in that way. Just something, that might be quite an intense 6 or 7 days, like residential retreat for people, but it's like something that feels good, and I'm excited about it. So I just want to be like a wise woman, like my wife's aunt. She's just so wise. She's such a sage. and I'm like, I want to be like that.
You are wise. I found you so wise when I was working with
Thank
you.
you.
Still do.
Thank you.
That sounds absolutely exciting.
Yeah, you'll have to come on it. We're going to be doing
I will.
We're going to be doing some
I'm there.
guinea pig sessions. So I will let you know.
Do the work.
You can come over to Germany and dig in with the goats.
I know I'd be digging in. I know that much. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So if people want to get hold of you, how do they get hold of you?
So they can go to my website, which is www.lizgoodchild.co.uk. I'm also on Facebook, fleetingly. I sometimes I'm there and then I don't write anything. So I'm not very consistent, I'm afraid, with social media. I've also just recently rejoined Instagram after a long hiatus. I'm kind of getting to grips with Instagram, and I'm not sure if I want to stay around and whether I like it yet, but if anyone wants to catch me on Instagram before I probably bugger off again and decide I don't like social media, then they can follow me over on Instagram. So
okay, I'll make sure that all the links for that lot are in the show notes as well. And I, for one, am really happy to see you show up on Instagram. A couple of weeks ago, I was like, Liz is here.
I don't understand it. I'm like, I was texting my friends like, what are stories for? And they're like, oh my God, you're such a grandma. And I was like, what do you use stories for? Why don't you just put it on your Instagram page? And then they were all like, I don't really know actually, like what you use them for, but you just put things in there and then they go after 24 hours. And I was like, but why would you do that though? What's the point? And they were like, you just do. And then, I feel like a grandma.
Yeah, I'm no
saying
expert.
That I feel like a grandma because
I'm no expert, that's for sure. But I really prefer Instagram now to Facebook so much.
There's definitely a difference, isn't there? I think I like Facebook because I can just write. I can write
as much as you want.
Whereas Instagram's like, you've really overdone that. And then I'm like, oh wow, now I have to take things out and think about word counts and so it all feels a bit more like you have to kind of.
What do you mean you've overdone it?
So it tells you if you have you've used too many letters.
Oh, okay.
There's a limit, isn't there? And also you have to take a picture. You have to take a photo. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to take photos of. So got a lot to learn. It's all changed. I mean, I know obviously it was always for photos.
Yeah, and I think stories, I don't know, this is what one of the things that I've either been told, must have been by somebody whose opinion I respect.
Yeah.
That I guess stories are like people sometimes some people all they do is look at stories.
Right, okay.
So the grid, if you like, or the posts or whatever it is, that scrolling, blah, 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 they might never, so yeah, it's kind of like that thinking about, and also what she said to me, this woman whose opinion I do respect. What do you do on Instagram? Do you scroll down and look for people you know and see what they've written, or is your behavior more going through stories and seeing what and that kind of thing? Which is also reminding me about what you said at that conference, which was about if you hate those lead magnets and those funnels and all that stuff about you get an email, 5 emails a day or whatever it is from somebody trying to like tell you to open their email and click on this and buy their stuff, then don't do it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. It reminds me, I worked with a business coach once who tried to get me to do funnels, and we had this like shared Google document, and I called it like the unfunnel, like this is not fun. Like it was already like it was already like not going to work well with us working. But yeah, actually it's really interesting that. So I don't really look at stories. I do a bit. In fact, I do look at stories, but I only realized like yesterday that if you like hold your thumb over it, you can pause it so you can actually read it. Like just stuff like that, I'm still really a beginner. And I was like, oh, now I can read it. Because I'm like, why is it going so fast?
It's interesting because people have stopped, because people, when I first went on Instagram, people said press to hold or whatever the thing is.
Oh, right, yeah.
Or press to hold to read or something.
Yeah.
And people are doing that a lot. And now I think they've just stopped doing it, like everybody knows. But of course not everyone does know.
Absolutely. And I was showing my wife something the other night on a story, and she is not on social media. Well, she is actually. She is on social media. She is on Instagram so that she can now stalk me, but doesn't post anything herself. And she was like, why is it going so fast? I can't read it. We were both really stressed, and I was like, I don't know how to get it back.
It does go quick. Yeah.
I've got a lot to learn, but yeah, it was like literally yesterday. I was like, oh, if I do that, then I can read it. I can pause it. So yeah, maybe don't follow me on Instagram because I don't know what I'm doing.
And we need to get you lots of followers, and then you'll stay because you'll feel, that they would like you to be there.
Okay, all right. Everybody follow me on Instagram, and I'll try and do you good.
So I'm just gonna like wrap it up then. So say thank you so much for being here, sharing all of that with us, and all that sort of like, I think there's been some really valuable insights and some stuff there for people to really think about in terms of thinking about how they want to grow their business, how they want to like make sure that they're managing their time and managing themselves through it as well. And also I think the thing about it all is that it's all normal, when you are going, shit, I didn't think I had to do this, or that's new, or that whole thing about all the stuff that comes up every time you stretch or you have to do a new thing in your business. We've all kind of been there and been through it. And all of the links of the stuff that we've talked about would be in the show notes. So thank you so much, Liz. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you so much for sharing all of your wonderful insights and takeaways for people.
Well, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I've also been enjoying listening to the previous episodes, and I just want to say well done, because as I said, before we started the podcast, like I know that it can be pretty challenging to do a podcast as well. There's a lot, I'm sure it's a pretty steep learning curve of learning all the technicalities and whatever else, but you've also created something that's much needed, especially for, a marginalized section of of the, I was going to say humanity, but yeah, you know, you've really created something that's required. So I want to say thank you on behalf of the LGBTQ plus community for creating something like that, because it's much needed.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll catch you soon, no doubt.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you.